Sweetland's based on a short story. How long ago did you read that story? How did you, where did you find it? How did you develop it like that?
I read that short story a painfully long time ago for the first time. It was published in the Minneapolis Star and Tribune in a Sunday supplement magazine. And they used to publish a short story every week, which is like the golden era that's long gone. And I used to read the short stories. I majored in English Lit, and I was really drawn to fiction. And I read the story, and it was at the beginning of my commercial directing career. I'd done probably a year's worth of commercials and knew that I always wanted to make story films that weren't about the story of a low-fat potato chip, but like real stories, you know, about the human condition. And this just struck me as a very simple, beautiful, spare love story, which I was drawn to. It had these sort of political issues of immigration and prejudice and things that were of interest to me. But honestly, when I finished, I just thought, boy, this would be really easy to make.
And the way that you pointed out was not hitting anyone over the head. It was very subtly the way that was done. Was that your writing, or was that from the story, and how did you develop it over those 16 years?
I don't know. I mean, I tend to like more subtle things, more films and stories. Will's story is beautiful. It's very light-handed and almost kind of wispy. It goes by so quickly. But yeah, Will Weaver, the author of the short story, gave me permission to kind of own the story. He said it's like an old room in my house that you've moved in and moved the furniture around and dusted up, and I think it looks great the way you have it too, you know? So a lot of that's why the film is credited as inspired by the short story, something he and I agreed on, because I mean, a lot of The Minister is my creation, and Franzen is my creation, and a lot of the structure is my creation, but completely inspired by him, so I really can't take credit for any of it. But I do tend to like subtle. I think it stays with you longer, you know? And it's better than the obvious, which is like, oh, I get that, and then you go have your after-dinner drinks, and then you go home, and that's the end of it. But subtle sometimes creeps in days later, and you keep thinking about it. I hope that's what this film does. So.
There's a lot of the film that it's silent. There's stuff going on, but not a lot of dialogue. Was that difficult to shoot and again to write?
Well, I was blessed with these two actors who understood it. I think it wasn't difficult to write because it's very much of the culture of the geographic region and of that time. I think there were just silences in the prairie and silences in that sort of Scandinavian taciturn nature. And I think the problem was not in the writing it, but in the understanding. I think people would read it and think, what happens? And nothing happens in this movie. And that's why it took 16 years to sort of get over that hurdle of, it's going to be beautiful, you know, it's going to work, it's going to be, wait till you see these two people together. And Tim and Liz were, you know, I think Liz said to me the reason I liked it is because it's one of those rare scripts that's about listening, not about talking. And I thought that's brilliant. I'd never thought of it that way, but I thought that was brilliant. And so she really brought a lot to it, and I think Tim really understood that character. And
but the cinematography, for a low-budget film, this is one of the most beautiful looking films I've seen. And how did you manage to accomplish that? Especially, I mean, you're in Minnesota. I know you got a lot of natural light and stuff, but it's such a good-looking film.
Well, I mean, I have to thank Dave Tumblety, the cinematographer, for his brilliance. But I also think that part of it came from 850 television commercials where, you know, I could study a visual style, and I knew what lenses not only looked like what, but in my interpretation, what lenses gave what emotional response, or the emotional response that I thought they were giving. And so when I got to the set, it was, you know, it was a lot easier for me because I wasn't overwhelmed. I know some first-time directors who turn around and see 95 people on the crew and they freeze, you know, and I think, I get that, I know what that is, I can focus on the actors and I can focus on the look of the film, which I think for that film is so important. And you go out there, there's really no way to not get that cinematography. You go out there, it's just like those big skies and that green barley and wheat, you know, and so it's hard not to get it. But Dave was great,